Do you, Ayana Mensa, take this man? The words echoed in the grand hall, but inside her chest, everything screamed to bolt. Her adoptive father's fingers trembled around hers, his eyes pleading without sound. She felt the weight of his desperation pressing down on her lungs. I do, she breathed out, barely audible. And do you, Mr. Kim Taehyun, take this woman? Silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Then came his voice, deep, controlled, laced with something that made her skin prickle. Do. It was the first time she'd heard him speak since arriving at this place. Something in that tone tugged at a memory she couldn't quite grasp, something dark and buried. By the power vested in me, you may now lift the bride's veil. Her entire body went rigid. She felt his fingers graze the delicate fabric, slow and purposeful, like he was savoring the moment. The world seemed to tilt. Her heartbeat stuttered. Her stomach plummeted. When the veil lifted and light flooded her vision, she saw his face. It wasn't a stranger. It was him. Hyun. The boy who used to mock the way she pronounced Korean words. The boy who laughed when she stumbled over her sentences. The boy who once dumped an entire carton of milk on her desk and told her it was cleaning supplies for foreigners. Now he stood before her transformed. Taller, sharper, devastatingly handsome. The softness of youth had been replaced by cold edges and a confidence that bordered on arrogance. His jawline could cut glass. His dark hair fell perfectly across his forehead, and his tailored black suit fit like it was sewn onto his body. There was something cruel in how beautiful he'd become. His eyes, those same eyes that used to tear her apart, held no apology, only recognition, and a faint, chilling smirk. Long time, Ayana. The words sliced through her like broken glass. If you're just discovering this channel, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our incredible stories. Now settle in, get comfortable, and let's dive straight into this unforgettable tale. Ayana sat by the window of the city bus, her temple resting against the cool glass as Seoul blurred past her. Neon signs bled into the twilight, people rushing below with lives that seemed so much more certain than hers. She often wondered why she stayed in this country. Maybe because leaving never solved anything. Not the cruelty she'd endured, not the shame that clung to her skin, not the nightmares that still woke her at 3 a.m. Her father, the man who'd adopted her when she was 7, had given her everything he could. A home, an education, kindness she didn't think existed. But she'd never told him the truth about school. When she came home with bruises or a busted lip, she'd smile through the pain. Tripped on the stairs, she'd say. Or caught my face on a locker. He'd frown, worry creasing his forehead, and she'd look away before the questions came. It was easier to hide it than to break his heart further. Now at 22 she should have been free. But freedom felt like a concept she'd only read about in books. Her life was a series of small battles. Classes that drained her spirit, nights that stretched endlessly, and a mind that refused to let her rest. She still heard their voices sometimes. The whispers, the laughter. Foreign girl. Ugly. Weird. No matter how much time passed, those words lived under her skin like splinters she couldn't remove. They just learned to hide better. She exhaled slowly, pressing her trembling fingers to her forehead. Just another day, she whispered to the glass. By the time she reached her tiny apartment, the sky had opened up. Cold rain kissed her face, sharp as reality. Her phone buzzed the second she pushed the door open. Her father. Her heart lurched. He rarely called, and when he did, it was never good news. She hesitated before answering. Dad. Ayana. His voice came through low and heavy, like he'd aged decades overnight. She froze in place. What happened? Silence filled the line. She could hear his ragged breathing through the static. I made a mistake, sweetheart. A terrible one. Her chest constricted. What kind of mistake? I borrowed money from people I shouldn't have. I thought I could fix it before you ever found out. Her voice rose. Who did you borrow from? A bank. He laughed, bitter and broken. If it were a bank, I wouldn't be this terrified. The apartment suddenly felt smaller, walls closing in. Dad, please don't tell me. The Kim family, he whispered. The Kim Syndicate. Her breath caught in her throat. Everyone in Seoul knew that name. The Kims ran the shadows of the city. Arms deals, underground trades, politicians who whispered their names with fear. And her father owed them money. No, she said, her voice cracking. Tell me you didn't. I had no choice, he shouted suddenly. The company was collapsing. Your tuition, your mother's hospital bills. I was drowning, Ayana. They offered help. Took it. I thought I could pay them back. She gripped the edge of her kitchen counter. Knuckles bone white. How much do you owe? Silence. How much? She demanded. Enough to get us both killed. Her body went numb. Ayana, he said softly. They came to see me today. She could hear her pulse in her ears. Who came? The heir. The boss's son. He said there's a way to settle the debt. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. What way? Her father hesitated, and in that pause, she knew her life was about to shatter. He wants to marry you. The world stopped spinning. Ayana blinked, her lips parting, but no sound emerged. What? He said if you agree to marry him, the debt disappears. They'll spare the business, the house, everything. Her heart pounded so violently she thought she might collapse. Dad, are you insane? You want me to marry some criminal? Ayana, no. You can't be serious. You think I'll just hand myself over to a mafia man like I'm property? Enough. Her father's voice cracked like thunder. You think I want this? You think I'm proud? Failed you. Failed our family. But this is the only way to keep you alive. Alive, she whispered. From who? He didn't answer. Her throat burned as tears pricked her eyes. No. I won't do it. Ayana, listen to me. I don't care if we lose the business. I don't care if we're broke. It's not about the business, he shouted. They'll kill us if you refuse. The silence that followed was suffocating. Only her ragged breathing filled the void. Ayana, her father's voice broke again, smaller this time. He gave me 3 days to give him your answer. She sank to the floor, hugging her knees to her chest. The walls seemed to press in, her heart thundering against her ribs. She'd run from her fears her entire life. The bullies, the pain, the voices that haunted her. But this time there was nowhere to run. You said he's the heir, she whispered shakily. What's he like? Her father sighed deeply. Cold. The kind of man people don't refuse. He barely spoke during our meeting. Just stared at me like I was already dead. Ayana's breath trembled. She hung up shortly after, unable to listen anymore. The phone slipped from her fingers as she buried her face in her palms. Outside, the rain turned violent, hammering against her window like an omen. She sat there for hours, numb and shattered. Memories of high school crashed through her mind. Laughter behind her back, cruel words carved into her locker. A pair of mocking eyes watching her cry in the bathroom. She'd promised herself she'd never let anyone control her again. Never let anyone have that kind of power over her. And now fate was demanding she marry it. The next day, she tried to convince herself it was a nightmare. But when her father called again, his tone erased all doubt. They know where you live, he said quietly. If you refuse, they'll come for you. Her hands shook so badly she dropped her mug, ceramic shattering across the floor. Dad, please don't make me do this, she whispered. Ayana, his voice fractured. Sometimes love looks like cruelty. If this is the price to keep you breathing, I'll pay it. Even if you hate me forever. Ayana bit her lip to keep from sobbing. When the call ended, she stared out the window at the city that never noticed her. The rain had stopped, but the clouds hung low and heavy. Her reflection stared back at her. Exhausted eyes, dark circles, the face of a girl who'd once dreamed of freedom. Marry him, she whispered bitterly to herself. And then what? You stop existing. But even as she said it, she knew she had no choice. Because when the Kim family made an offer, saying no wasn't survival. It was suicide. Her phone rang at dawn. Call was brief. Get ready. The ceremony's at noon. A man's emotionless voice said. That was it. No explanation, no sympathy, just an order. By the time they arrived for her, she was already dressed. Not in white, but in champagne silk, a color that seemed too soft for the kind of marriage she was entering. The gown hugged her curves delicately, embroidered with tiny pearls that shimmered under every flicker of light. A silk veil covered her face, heavy and suffocating. She wondered if it was intentional, to hide her fear or mask her tears. 2 black sedans waited outside her building. No one spoke during the drive. The men wore identical dark suits, their faces blank. She could feel their eyes on her through the tinted windows, through the silence that pressed against her chest. She clenched her fists in her lap, trying to steady her breathing. This is just a nightmare, she told herself. Wake up. But every turn of the car, every hum of the engine, every passing second reminded her it was devastatingly real. They stopped in front of a massive structure that looked more like a fortress than a venue. Marble gleamed under the late morning sun. Men in black suits guarded every entrance, their hands resting near concealed weapons. Inside, it smelled of orchids and wealth. Soft classical music played as she was escorted down the aisle. The guests, perhaps 40 at most, sat in neat rows, their expressions ranging from curious to pitying to cold. No one smiled. Her father stood near the altar, his shoulders sagging beneath his suit. He tried to look strong, but when their eyes met, guilt flooded his face. She wanted to run to him, to beg him one last time to stop this madness, but her legs moved on their own. Her footsteps echoed, light but weighted with meaning. Each one felt like a nail being hammered into a coffin. Worse, she couldn't see the groom's face yet. He stood at the altar, tall and silent, his back to her. The air around him felt dangerous, electric. She could sense it, the authority, the power, the threat. Her heart pounded so violently she thought it might burst through her chest. When she reached him, she barely registered the officiant's voice. Everything sounded muffled, like she was submerged underwater. Do you, Ayana Mensa, take this man? She wanted to scream no. She wanted to run. But her father's trembling hands clasped hers briefly from behind, whispering a plea she couldn't ignore. I do, she said quietly, her voice trembling. And do you, Mr. Kim Taehyun, take this woman? There was a pause, a long one, the kind that stretched unbearably. She heard him inhale, steady and controlled. Then that low voice replied, smooth and laced with danger. I do. It was the first time she'd heard him speak since this began. Something about that tone felt disturbingly familiar. But her mind couldn't place it yet. By the power vested in me, the officiant continued, you may now lift the bride's veil. Her breath hitched. She felt his fingers touch the fabric. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted the veil. Light flooded her vision. And then everything stopped. Her heart froze. Her stomach dropped. It wasn't a stranger standing before her. It was him. Hyun. The boy who used to laugh when she mispronounced Korean words in class. The boy who mimicked her accent until everyone joined in. The boy who once poured an entire drink over her head and called it shampoo for the foreign girl. Now he stood before her as a man. Taller, sharper, impossibly handsome. The boyish cruelty had transformed into something colder, more refined, more dangerous. His jawline was razor-sharp, his dark hair styled perfectly back, his black suit tailored with precision. There was something sinister in how beautiful he'd become. His eyes, those same eyes that used to torment her, held no trace of remorse, only recognition, and a faint, cruel smirk. Long time, Ayana. The words cut deeper than any blade ever could. Her lips parted but nothing came out. Her throat burned. He tilted his head slightly, watching her with a mixture of amusement and something unreadable. She could see the satisfaction in his expression, the look a predator gives when the prey realizes it's trapped. The guests began to applaud softly, the sound fading into the background. Ayana couldn't hear anything anymore. Not the music, not the officiant, just the echo of his voice and her own heartbeat roaring in her ears. Her knees buckled slightly. She stumbled, but he caught her. Not gently, not kindly, just firmly enough to keep her upright. "Careful," he murmured, his voice close to her ear. "Wouldn't want my bride collapsing on our wedding day." She jerked away from him, breathing unevenly. "Why? Why you?" His smirk deepened. "Fate has a twisted sense of humor, don't you think?" Ayana's eyes blurred with tears. Every instinct in her body screamed to run, to escape, to rip the veil away and disappear. But she couldn't. Not in front of these people. Not with her father watching in shame. The ceremony ended in a fog. Rings exchanged, papers signed. Her soul felt like it was being auctioned off piece by piece. Then came the cameras, the murmurs of congratulations, the weight of his hand on the small of her back as they walked down the aisle together. Every step beside him felt like a betrayal of everything she'd survived. When they finally reached the car waiting outside, the crowd parted. She caught a glimpse of her father. His eyes red, lips trembling. He mouthed something that looked like, "Forgive me." But she couldn't. Not yet. Maybe never. Inside the car, silence swallowed the space again. The scent of his cologne, cold, expensive, painfully familiar, suffocated her. She turned her face away, wiping at her tears. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Taehyun chuckled lowly, resting his arm along the window. "You'll understand soon enough." "Don't play games with me," she snapped, her voice cracking. He turned to her, eyes glinting. "Games? This isn't a game, Ayana. This is business." Her breath hitched. He leaned closer, close enough for her to see a faint scar near his temple. A new addition, one that somehow made him look even more dangerous. "Funny, isn't it?" he murmured. "All those years you avoided me, and now you belong to me." Ayana's tears spilled freely. Then she turned away, shoulders shaking silently. He watched her for a moment, and then, to her shock, his hand reached out. 2 fingers brushed her cheek, wiping away a tear that had escaped. The gesture should have been tender. It wasn't. His touch lingered just a second too long, enough to make her flinch. He smiled faintly, that same cruel expression from years ago. "There," he said softly. "Wouldn't want to ruin that beautiful face." Her breath caught again, not from the words, but from the way he said them. Like this was only the beginning of a game he'd already won. The car pulled away, the city outside becoming a blur of lights and shadows. And as Ayana stared out the window, silent tears streaming down her face, she realized something terrifying. This wasn't just revenge. This was only the start. The mansion looked like something carved from marble and shadows. Every surface gleamed. Every footstep echoed. Every corner seemed to watch her. Ayana moved through it like a ghost, beautiful but displaced. Guards lined the corridors, standing rigid in their black uniforms. She could feel their stares tracking her movements as if she might bolt at any moment. Air smelled of jasmine and power, a scent that made her chest feel tight. She stopped before a massive window overlooking manicured gardens. The view was stunning, but there was no warmth in it, only cold perfection. Even the flowers looked arranged by command rather than care. Behind her, measured footsteps approached. She didn't need to turn to know it was him. Taehyun. His presence filled the space before his voice did. "You're awake early." Ayana kept her gaze on the window. "Hard to sleep when you're watched like a criminal." He came to stand beside her, tall and composed, dressed in a perfectly fitted black shirt that emphasized the muscle beneath. The cologne from last night still lingered, rich and dangerously intoxicating. "You're not a criminal," he said coolly. "You're my wife." She let out a hollow laugh. "Right. The decorative kind. The one that comes with invisible chains." Taehyun turned his head slightly, eyes narrowing. Be careful with that tongue. I told you not to tell me what to do. He smiled faintly. And I told you I don't take orders from anyone. She met his gaze without flinching. Then I guess we're both prisoners here. Something flickered in his expression. Amusement perhaps, or pity. It vanished too quickly to decipher. Breakfast is ready, he said simply, stepping away. Try not to be late. The staff get nervous when you don't show. I'm sure they're nervous about upsetting you, not me. He didn't deny it. Ayana followed him to the dining room, her bare feet brushing against thick carpet. The table could seat 20 easily, yet only 2 places were set. Silver cutlery, porcelain dishes, food that looked too perfect to be real. He sat at the head. She sat across from him. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint sound of his fork against the plate. She watched him for a while, studying how controlled he was. Every movement precise, every glance calculated. It infuriated her. How could someone who destroyed her life look so unbothered? Finally she spoke. What's the real point of this marriage? Because I know it isn't love. Taehyun didn't look up. It's business. Business, she repeated bitterly. You married me for business. He finally raised his eyes to hers, dark as midnight. You're smart enough to know the world doesn't run on love, Ayana. This union stabilizes the Kim name, silences our enemies, and proves I can commit without emotion clouding my judgment. Ayana's hands clenched. So I'm just proof of concept. He leaned back slightly. You're proof that I control chaos. She scoffed. How romantic. He gave her a small, humorless smile. You're safe here. Fed, clothed, protected. There are women who'd kill for that. Then let them have it, she shot back. Let them live in your golden cage. His fork stilled. His eyes met hers again, cold and sharp. You should learn when to stop talking. Or what? You'll throw another plate at me. The reference to their earlier confrontation hung in the air like smoke. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Instead he stood, his chair scraping against the floor. Finish your food, he said quietly. I'll have your things moved to the east wing. Stay there. Don't wander where you're not supposed to. Ayana frowned. You really think I'm going to sit around like some obedient? His gaze snapped back to her, sharp enough to cut through her words. Don't test me, he warned softly. You're not ready for the world you've stepped into. She swallowed hard. There was something in his tone, something more dangerous than anger. It was a promise. He left the room without another word, his footsteps fading into silence. For a long time Ayana sat there, staring at the untouched food. Her pulse was still racing. Her body still trembling, not from fear but from rage. She hated him. Every controlled breath he took, every command he gave, every way he reminded her that her life was no longer hers. But there was something else, something she couldn't name. Because sometimes when he spoke, there was a hesitation before his words, a flicker, like he was fighting something inside himself. It wasn't foolish. A man like Taehyun didn't hesitate for nothing. She glanced toward the hallway where he'd disappeared, her voice barely above a whisper. Who are you really, Kim Taehyun? Taehyun stood by the window of his private study, hands buried in his pockets, eyes fixed on the city lights flickering below like scattered diamonds. His younger brother stood behind him, pacing with restless energy. We're getting close, Hyung, his brother said, voice tight with frustration. I spoke to the investigator again. Still nothing concrete about Dad's death, but I'm being more careful this time. You have to trust me. Taehyun exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening. The last time he'd trusted his brother, it nearly destroyed everything. His brother had always been impulsive. Parties, gambling, substances. It had taken a stint in rehabilitation to straighten him out. Now he claimed to be focused, determined, but still unpredictable. Taehyun finally turned to face him. Thanks for the update. If anything else comes up, call me immediately. His tone hardened. And the White Tiger Gang is already on my radar. Don't take any risks. Move with extra security. His brother nodded, running a hand through his hair. Yeah, I know. The frustrating part is we still don't know who leads them. Only his second-in-command ever shows up. Whoever he is, he's a ghost. Taehyun's brows furrowed. That single fact gnawed at him every night. A faceless leader, a cold trail, and his father's death with no justice. That's what bothers me most, Taehyun murmured, his gaze drifting back to the window. Ghosts don't stay hidden forever. Taehyun slipped into Ayana's room past midnight. The lamp on the nightstand cast a soft glow across the bed, and he paused in the doorway, watching her sleep. She looked smaller somehow, vulnerable, her lashes dark against her cheeks. The steady rise and fall of her breathing should have calmed him. But his hands clenched, guilt twisting like a knife in his chest. He stepped closer and carefully took her hand in his palm, feeling the quick flutter of her pulse beneath his fingertips. For a moment, the room narrowed to just that connection, that warmth between them. His mind raced through every half-formed apology, every plan to somehow undo what had been done. Ayana's eyes opened suddenly. The first thing she registered was his reflection in the mirror across the room. Taehyun leaning against the dresser, arms crossed. His shirt unbuttoned just enough to reveal the definition of his chest and abs. Her breath caught. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up. But then she checked herself, scanning as if to make sure he hadn't taken anything, her dignity, her peace. She rose to her feet like a coiled spring. Can you stop barging into my room? This is the 5th time, she snapped, fists curling at her sides. It's my house, Taehyun said lazily, his voice low but sharp enough to make her clench her jaw. I go where I please. Ayana took a step closer, fury flickering across her face like fire ready to consume him. You, she raised her hand ready to slap him, but his next words froze her mid-motion. If you slap me again, he said, leaning slightly against the dresser, we'll be consummating this marriage right here. Her hand trembled in the air before slowly dropping. What a sick thing to say, she hissed, her voice tight with both rage and disbelief. I hate you so much. He chuckled softly, the sound deep and mocking as she turned to leave. I have something for you, he called after her, amusement dripping from every word. She spun halfway, her glare sharp enough to cut steel. Keep your gifts. Taehyun's smile widened, his tone teasing yet possessive. As you wish, Mrs. Kim Taehyun. Ayana whipped around fully. I'm Ayana, she snapped. Not in my world, he murmured, smirking as her jaw tightened before she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The mansion seemed to breathe easier once Taehyun left, as though even the walls relaxed in his absence. The guards shifted positions. The staff whispered less. But Ayana couldn't relax. Her mind spun endlessly. She rose from the chair and wandered through the corridors, trying to memorize every hallway, every potential exit. The air smelled faintly of sandalwood, the kind of scent that clung to wealth and old power. Every painting looked like an heirloom, ancestors staring down like silent witnesses to her imprisonment. She turned a corner and nearly collided with someone. Oh, sorry, she muttered quickly, stepping back. The man smiled, easy and warm, nothing like Taehyun's cold precision. You must be Ayana, he said. Hello, sister-in-law. Ayana blinked. The resemblance was there. Sharp features, dark eyes, but softer, younger. His hair was a lighter shade. His manner casual, almost playful. And you are? She asked warily. Miho, he said, extending a hand. Kim Miho. The brother who didn't inherit the empire or the attitude. She hesitated before taking his hand. It was surprisingly warm. I didn't know Taehyun had a brother, she admitted. He chuckled, eyes glinting with mischief. He rarely mentions me. He likes keeping people in neat categories, and I've never fit into his. There was something charming about him, the kind of person who could make anyone feel safe just by smiling. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed loosely. "So," he said, studying her. "You're the woman everyone's whispering about." Whispering. Of course. The mysterious wife who appeared out of nowhere. They say Taehyun didn't even inform the board about the wedding. You must have done something extraordinary to make him move so fast. Ayana's expression tightened. You talk a lot for someone I just met. He raised his hands, laughing lightly. Fair point. No offense intended. I'm just curious. My brother isn't exactly known for sentimentality. Neither am I, she replied coolly. That earned her a genuine laugh. I like you, he said, eyes sparkling. Maybe you'll finally make him human again. Ayana tilted her head, studying him carefully. You sound like you don't like him very much. Miho shrugged, casual and dismissive. I don't dislike him. He's my brother. We coexist. Anyway, welcome to the family, Ayana. If you ever need someone who isn't made of ice, you know where to find me. Ayana ignored Taehyun the entire day after the wedding. She barely looked at him, barely spoke. When night fell, she refused dinner and locked herself in the bedroom. The sound of his knocking came again, steady and persistent, but she remained still, pretending not to hear. Her gaze dropped to her wrist, to the faint scar that still marked her skin. The reminder from years ago, the one her bullies left behind. It stung more tonight than it had in months. She blinked hard, fighting the tears threatening to fall. Ayana. His voice came through the door, low but firm. Her chest tightened. The door creaked open. He was already inside. She shot up from the bed, fists clenching at her sides, fury flashing in her eyes. Get out, she snapped, her voice trembling more from pain than anger. He didn't stop. Each step he took brought him closer. The air between them grew heavy. Her breath quickened. How could you do this to me? She burst out, her voice breaking. Do you even know what I went through? Because of those bullies, I've had this scar on my wrist for years. I still cover it with makeup every single day so my father won't see. Her voice cracked as the tears finally spilled. She wiped them roughly, hating that he could see her like this. He said nothing. Not a single word. His silence was louder than anything he could have said. He just kept walking toward her, slow and unshaken, eyes unreadable. Ayana's breathing quickened. She stepped back, one shaky step after another, until her back hit the wall. The cold surface pressed against her spine. He stopped right in front of her. And for a moment, neither of them moved. Just the sound of their breathing filling the space between. Your food is getting cold, he said softly, his tone calm, almost too calm. The sound of his voice only made her blood boil hotter. Before she even realized it, her palm cracked across his cheek. A sharp slap that echoed through the room. He didn't flinch. His head didn't even turn. He just stood there, staring straight at her, expression unreadable. Your food will be brought to you, he said finally, voice steady, almost gentle. Make sure you eat and get some rest. That was all. No anger, no retaliation, just that infuriating calm. Ayana's hands trembled. She wanted to slap him again, to scream, to break something. Instead, she turned her face away, avoiding his gaze. She hated how he looked at her, like he could see through every layer she tried to hide behind. He sighed quietly, then turned and started walking toward the door. His steps were slow, heavy. There were things he wanted to say. Apologies, maybe. But the words stuck in his throat. For now, all he could do was watch her from a distance. Her voice cut through the silence, sharp and bitter. So what now? After all this madness, what's your plan? Introduce me to all your low-life friends. He stopped but didn't turn around. It would be nice, he said calmly, if you showed some respect when mentioning my friends. Screw you and your friends, she shouted, her chest heaving. I swear I'll make your life hell if you don't release me from this ridiculous marriage. That made him turn fully. Their eyes locked. Fury against fury. Neither backed down. For a moment it was pure fire between them. Then he laughed. A low, dark laugh that filled the room and made her stomach twist. "You'll have to kill me first, Ayana," he said coldly. With that he walked out. The door slammed shut. Ayana's knees gave out. She sank to the floor, tears spilling freely now. Her phone kept buzzing. Her father's name flashing again and again. But she didn't answer. She couldn't. He was the reason she was trapped in this nightmare. She sat there on the cold floor, sobbing quietly, feeling the weight of everything crushing down on her. The fear, the anger, the heartbreak she couldn't escape. Ayana watched him go, a small smile tugging at her lips despite herself. Somehow, she found herself preferring Miho's easy warmth to Taehyun's icy distance. "Had I been married to your brother," she muttered under her breath, "life would have been so much better." Later that evening, they sat across from each other at the dining table again. Ayana's eyes blazed with anger as she glared at him, arms folded across her chest, while he ate with infuriating calm. "You know what?" she said, voice sharp. "I'd rather marry a complete stranger than be tied to my high school bully." "Absolutely," she confirmed when he raised an eyebrow. "Yes, Taehyun. 1,000 times yes." Her words hit him harder than he showed, but he swallowed it down, forcing his face into a mask of indifference. Changing the subject, he leaned back slightly. "Do you like the car I bought for you?" She shook her head firmly. "No. I'd rather you just take me home." He smirked, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "Half of my assets will be registered under your name." Ayana blinked, caught off guard. "I couldn't care less," she snapped, eyes flashing. "Because no matter what you do, it won't erase what you and your pathetic friends did to me back then. It's disgusting that you think money could make me forgive you." Taehyun's jaw tightened. His hands slammed onto the table, making her flinch. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," he growled, voice low but sharp. "I just want to make things right." Ayana stood, leaning forward, heat radiating from her anger. "So it's true then. You really are psychotic." Her words cut like knives. "You're a madman who needs serious help. Is that it?" That ignited something in him. His eyes darkened, burning with fury, and he grabbed the nearest plate, hurling it toward the wall behind her. Food splattered across the surface with a sickening crash. Ayana froze, heart hammering. Memories of high school rumors flashed through her mind. No wonder he'd bullied her so mercilessly back then. So devoid of empathy, so cruel. A gentle voice broke through her panic. "Are you all right?" She turned to see Miho standing there, calm but concerned. "Yes," she murmured, still trembling. "Sit down. Let me get you some water," he said softly. She nodded and lowered herself onto the chair. Within seconds, he returned, setting the glass carefully in front of her. As she sipped, the tension slowly bled from her shoulders. They fell into quiet conversation about Miho's life. Small talk that felt like a fragile bridge between chaos and calm, giving her a brief reprieve from the storm that was Taehyun. That night, rain hammered against the mansion roof. Thunder rolled across the hills. Sleep refused to come, so she slipped out of bed, restless, drawn by a sliver of light coming from a room down the hall. She hesitated at first, then curiosity won. The heavy door was slightly ajar. Voices drifted out. Low, sharp, dangerous. She leaned closer. "He's losing control," a man's voice hissed. She recognized it immediately. "Oh." Another voice, unfamiliar and older, replied. "Watch what you say. He's still in charge." "Not for long," Miho whispered. "He's obsessed with finding out who killed our father. If he gets too close, I'm finished. You know who did it, don't you?" The other man went silent. Miho continued, voice trembling with suppressed fury. "I was the one who stabilized this empire after our father died. I cleaned up the mess, silenced the traitors, made sure Taehyun looked like the rightful heir. But he's too blind to see that the real threat has been inside all along." Ayana's hand flew to her mouth. "He killed his own father." Her pulse thundered in her ears. Miho's tone dropped to a cold whisper. Once Taehyun finds proof, he'll come for me. So I'll get to him first. Once he's gone, the board will have no choice but to hand me everything. I'll finish what I started. Ayana's breath came in short, panicked gasps. She needed to move to get away, but her feet felt rooted to the spot. Inside the room, Miho paused. Did you hear something? Her heart stopped. She turned and ran as quietly as she could, her bare feet silent against the marble floor. She didn't stop until she reached her bedroom, slamming the door and locking it behind her. Her hands shook violently as she pressed her back against the door, sliding down until she sat on the floor. Miho killed their father. And now he was planning to kill Taehyun. She had to warn him. But how? He'd never believe her. He barely trusted her as it was. And if Miho found out she'd overheard? She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to steady her breathing. Outside, the storm raged on, thunder crashing like the sound of a world collapsing. And somewhere in the mansion, two brothers lived under the same roof. One hunting for the truth, the other hiding behind a smile, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Ayana closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. She was trapped in a war she never asked to fight. And the only question now was, would she survive it?